alone. The evening sun bathed the living room in a warm golden glow, its last rays of light playing tricks on the walls as shadows lengthened and danced. Ben sat on the couch, his palms damp with nervousness, as his parents, Karen and David, knelt before him. "All right, Ben," his father began, his voice calm but firm. "Your mom and I are going out for our anniversary. We'll be back tomorrow morning. This is the first time you're home alone all night, but we trust you to be responsible." His mother, her eyes a mix of love and apprehension, handed him a folded piece of paper. "We left you a casserole in the fridge. Just heat it up if you get hungry, and here are all the phone numbers you might need." She offered a reassuring smile. "If you order pizza, use the credit card. The PIN is on the back, and if there's an emergency, don't hesitate to call. We're just a phone call away." Ben took the paper, his fingers tracing the numbers as he nodded, trying to hide his anxiety. He knew his parents deserved this night, but the thought of the empty house filled him with an unease he couldn't shake. He decided to go with his initial plan, carefully placing the casserole dish in the oven before the lure of a steaming pizza won him over. He hoped the pizza would distract him from the eerie solitude. With his order placed and a horror movie playing on the TV, Ben cozied up on the couch. The sinister plot and unsettling soundtrack intensified his unease, and the shadows seemed to grow darker around him. Every creak and groan of the old house was amplified, and a dull ache began to throb in his temples. He dismissed it as nerves, but a faint, sweet smell, like old sugar, seemed to cling to the air. Finally, as the movie reached its climax, Ben couldn't bear the house any longer. He turned off the TV, hoping the silence would bring him peace. Instead, the room plunged into an eerie quiet that felt heavier than the music. His senses, already heightened, seemed to warp. The shadows no longer danced. They shifted, moving just at the edge of his vision. He gripped the edge of the couch, waiting for the pizza to arrive. Then, a knock at the door shattered the silence. Ben's heart leaped into his throat. He cautiously approached a front door and peered through the peephole. The pizza delivery person stood there, holding a familiar box. He gulped down his fear and cracked the door open slightly. "Leave the pizza on the porch, please." As the delivery person retreated, Ben couldn't help but glance around the front yard. Just for a fleeting moment, he saw it. A shadowy figure, impossibly thin, quickly ducked behind a nearby tree. He told himself it was just his imagination. But as he ate, his eyes darted to the window, and the unease that had been gnawing at him swelled into a living thing. With each bite, his anxiety refused to abate. The shadows seemed to twist and coil, and a soft scraping sound echoed from the hallway outside. He froze. A faint, unintelligible whisper teased his ears. His pulse hammered in his head, a relentless thrumming that drowned out the world. Then, the telephone rang with a shrill jolt that made him jump. He hesitated before reluctantly answering the call, raising the receiver to his ear with a trembling hand. "Hello," he said, his voice a terrified whisper, but there was no response, just an eerie, unbroken silence. He tried again. "Mom? Dad?" The silence from the other end was a weight. He slammed the receiver back onto the cradle, his mind spiraling into a state of panic. It had to be a glitch, a random occurrence. He tried to find a rational explanation, but the sweet smell in the air was growing stronger, sweeter. He couldn't escape the overwhelming sense that something was terribly wrong. It was becoming apparent that he was not alone, that the sinister, the unknown, was closing in around him. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Ben crept into the kitchen. The silence was broken only by his hesitant footsteps and the distant whisper of the wind outside. As he entered the kitchen, the sight that met his eyes was beyond horrifying. The shadows from the oven had coalesced, twisting and contorting into a living, grotesque mass. It was a monstrous creature, its form ever-changing and nightmarish. It smelled of sulfur and something else, a sweet, cloying odor that filled his lungs and made him gag. The beast hissed, a sound that sent a shiver down Ben's spine. In sheer terror, he stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The creature, unhindered by physical obstacles, followed him relentlessly, a malevolent shadow in the form of a gas stove. then raced through the house, the monster's eerie presence nipping at his heels. He slammed the door to his parents' room shut and locked it, but the sense of safety was momentary. The creature's form stretched and contorted, seeping under the door like inky sludge. Ben knew he was running out of time. He grabbed the phone and dialed 911, his voice a frantic sob as he tried to convey the address and the horror he was facing. The operator on the other end was a voice of calm in the dark abyss that surrounded him, but the nightmare was inching closer, its eerie presence filling the room with dread. In a final act of desperation, Ben opened the bedroom window and clambered out onto the roof. He scrambled down the wall, trellis, his hands shaking, his heart pounding. When his feet finally touched the ground, he ran into the street, his mind consumed by a single thought, escape. But his hope was swiftly extinguished. As he took his first few steps into the street, a sudden and paralyzing sensation washed over him. He froze. Two glaring, malevolent eyes materialized from the shadows of a streetlight, gleaming with an unholy light that locked onto his very soul. The sweet odor was everywhere now, overwhelming his senses. He was trapped, his world blurring as a wave of vertigo consumed him. His legs gave way, and he collapsed onto the cold pavement. The malevolent eyes were the last thing he saw as his consciousness slipped away. Karen and David's car slowly pulled into the driveway, their headlights casting long, eerie shadows across the lawn. The tension in the air was palpable as they approached their home, their hearts heavy with a sense of unease. Then they saw him. Their hearts sank as they noticed his unnatural posture, his head turned with a jerky, swift movement, his wide, fear-filled eyes locked onto their car. He crumpled to the ground, his body surrendering to the horrors that had unfolded during the night. The night was pierced by the sound of sirens as the emergency vehicles arrived. The fire marshal, a gray figure, met them with a solemn expression. "We got a call from your son," he said, his voice quiet. He must have been disoriented. "You have a massive gas leak in your kitchen. The oven was left on, and it's been filling the house all night. If he hadn't gone outside, he wouldn't have made it." Karen and David's fear turned to a profound, sickening relief. The monster that haunted their son wasn't a shadow or a creature. It was a silent, invisible killer in her own home, and in his terror, he had escaped it. The end.